Welcome to Power Talks with Santosh Shah. Today we have with us Nepal's eminent figure in the field of leadership and diplomacy, Honorable Dr. Bekh Thapa. The Constitution Assembly elections was held last year with one clear agenda, to write a far-sighted constitution that will ensure the rights of people from various ethnicity, from various geographical region, and of various economic variations. During the last month, the Maoist-led government failed, and the exercise to form a new government has begun. Can the shift of political dynamics of this kind be taken as a regular political culture, or is it very unique to Nepal's case?
It has become a regular feature in Nepalese politics since 2046. Unfortunately, in spite of the fact that people have given a full-term mandate to various governments, various political parties, Nepal was unable to experience stability in governance. As a result, I think is what we are witnessing today is a continuity of that same culture within which development, stability, good governance has failed us. And we are now witnessing a very volatile, very difficult, and very disruptive daily life.
That's the problem we are facing now, because the politicians don't seem to be serious about writing the constitution, and they have started a culture of failing the government and forming the new, and the fear is that this culture will continue every few months probably.
No, what we have seen, history is before us, past 50 years, whether it's the monarchy-led or political party-led government. We have not succeeded in convincing the people that their interest is primary, that we will be guided by norms, ethics, and morality, that individuals' greed for power, greed for other resources, and very myopic view centered around person, group, then, and then their own group and their own party before the nation. I think, people are becoming not only wary, but also very skeptical about whether the nation can really cross that benchmark of writing a law and owning the law because it is fair, it is uniformly applied, and we believe in rule of law. That sense, I think, has not only eluded us. No point just blaming the politician. They are in the game for themselves. But the people who have given them the mandate, they have become the victim of the process rather than beneficiary of the process.
Now, how do we accept or how do we explain that the losers of CA elections are given the nominations to rule the nation? The post of Prime Minister, the post of Foreign Minister, and probably there will be new ministers appointed who have lost the CA elections in the past.
In a sense, when you talk of people's mandate, it's almost a joke that people who have the mandate have the responsibility. People with the mandate are in the background. On the other hand, people who had the mandate, who had a chance, they also didn't live up to their responsibility. So in a sense, it's a failure of those who got mandate from the people, and therefore, the others got a chance. But it's somewhat ironical and difficult to explain. On the other hand, as citizens, we need to focus on the basic task of constitution forming and good governance in the interim so that people can lead a normal life and expect better tomorrow based on rule of law, based on a constitution that is widely accepted.
For Maoists, this was the first time that they led the government, and they struggled with it, probably they even failed with it. But now they're positioned there where they're very good at, and that's in the opposition. Do you see the peace process and stability of the nation at stake?
Well, in a sense, people at the moment are asking that very question themselves. Being good at opposing is not the monopoly of Maoist party alone. Other major parties also, when they were in the opposition. But being a successful opposition means playing a disruptive game, not a positive game. What you need is a party that focuses on the positive dimension of our challenges. Then this is where, I think we need to combine our wisdom and people's judgment And one hopes, and the present Prime Minister is saying the same thing, others are also appealing to the Maoists to be a part of the governance so that collectively we can use all our wisdom to face the challenge and to come up with an opportunity for renewal of Nepal. Frankly, at the moment, the rest of the world, based on what I am hearing, what I am reading by scholars and writing of the scholars, Nepal is being perceived as a nation getting weak and weak and weak and getting weaker. Today we are becoming more and more dependent. I'm not only talking about economy. I'm talking about the overall, look of the nation. And I think people are concerned, friends are concerned, others are not concerned. For them, it's just another country.
Dr. Thapa, you have served as the Minister of Finance. You have also served as the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Why is it that Nepalese politicians enjoy or are fully consumed with the culture of politics, conspiracy, deceit, and conflict? Why is it that they do not focus on people's simple need of education and economy?
There are times, I question myself, Individually you talk to Nepal's politicians. They are intelligent, they mean well, they convey their impressions well, but collectively their expression of their desire and the result of their conduct has given the impression that Nepal is unable to govern herself, whether it's the monarchy, now multi-party democracy, republic. The basic culture of seizing the opportunity, getting hold, making good use of the opportunity and deliver the result. In a sense, I think our growing sense of dependence, kind of lack of self-confidence, and frankly speaking, I don't want to cast any blame on anyone, any party or any group. I want to maintain equal distance with all. But Nepal has been singularly unfortunate in the quality of leadership. The leaders that are on the horizon today have yet to prove that they are capable of people's confidence.
We'll continue with our conversation after a short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Power Talks. We are in conversation with Honorable Dr. Bekh Thapa, former Minister of Finance and Foreign Affairs. On one hand, we do not have a stable government, and on the other hand, our politicians often blame the international community for anything that goes wrong here. How important is it that we maintain a uniform friendly attitude towards our international community, especially our immediate neighbors, India and China, and our donor nations?
Well, I think conduct of foreign policy, while will be helped by a stable government, but is not altogether the function of any government at a time. I think when it comes to foreign policy, it is related ultimately to a larger national interest, in which no political party has a monopoly. In a sense, it's commonly owned. It is a national policy aimed towards national self-interest. Now, judging from that point of view, if you look at our neighbors, whether it's China or India, their conduct with us is based on stable policy. You don't find opposition leader in India coming to Nepal and say, I disagree with my government. Leave alone China, because it is a monolithic society. So you don't hear diverse opinion from that end. But their conduct with us has seen a very stable approach over decades, not just years. We are fragmented not just between the parties, but even within the party there is fragmentation. And not only that, I find even an individual, the split personality. He says one thing to the people here, he says something else to outsiders, in a sense, conveying a national weakness. So our failure is more on account of individuals' lack of perception, lack of leadership, and also commitment to larger national interest. We have yet to mature. It's not that we don't understand our national interest.
When we talk of stable foreign policy of Nepal, we see King Birendra as a successful statesman. He was able to focus on development, strengthen bilateral relations, and also avoided any foreign political interventions. How did he do that?
Two things, I think, I call him one of the most decent human beings. He may not have been the strongest leader, On the other hand, he understood people's perception. When pushed by public opinion, he accepted. Instead of sort of succumbing to foreign interest or other interests, he told me that I would rather listen to the people and follow their advice. After all, I am the king because of them. I'm quoting him, when he said that in my conversation with him. So in 2046, when he saw the public pressure, he readily accepted and then didn't play hanky-panky. He said, I give them a long rope. It's for them to prove it. So in fact, the highlight of his regime, I happened to be ambassador in India. This was a few months before he died. It was January of 2001. He was invited by Government of India to be the chief guest at the Republic Day parade. The President of India, K.R. Narayanan, a great scholar himself, in his speech, he said, Your Majesty, you are the only one in Nepal who is following the Constitution, implying that the political parties were not following the Constitution. That rule of law was being ignored, but not by the king. And he said, we invited you in recognition of that. Unfortunately, we lost him. But I think, as I said, his weakness was his strength. The moment he recognized what the people wanted, he was willing to go back and take a, rear view, take the back seat, and let people govern. Unfortunately, the people's representatives didn't prove themselves capable of that trust. Not his trust, but people's trust. And therefore, we had a long period after his death, long period of struggle, then the change, then an opportunity to redo what was done in 1991. In a sense, I think I remember personally King Birendra with a great deal of reverence.
He was also the first leader to accept the then rebel Maoists as common citizen of Nepal.
Well, it's just I go back to my conversation with him. I happened to be in Delhi at that time. So Government of India, leaders in Government of India were saying, how come, your king is not allowing the army to be deployed? The Prime Minister wanted to deploy the army, and your king is objecting to this. So I came here for consultation. Whenever something like that happened, it called for consultation. I came and, asked the question directly to the king. Your Majesty, nobody is accusing you because you are a constitutional monarch. On the other hand, whatever leverage the palace has over the army has been seen as a hindrance to the present day struggle. Then, his simple answer was, in Nepali, obviously we talk in Nepali. He said, I do not want a Nepali to kill another Nepali. That is not the solution. It has to be, a political approach, a political solution. So if you confront a question like this from our foreign friends, tell them that I don't believe in massacre of the people and stability of politics.
In June 2001, we lost Nepal's beloved King Birendra and his family in the tragic royal massacre. As an ambassador to India, you had to face the public outcry and had to face the international media. How did you balance your personal emotion, and yet you were very professional while facing the camera?
I don't think I was as able to balance my emotion because when I faced the Indian media, there was a moment when I looked at the photograph of the king, I too broke down. But the difficulty at that time was Kathmandu had collapsed. There was no communication from Kathmandu.
We had a curfew for a week.
And not only that, nobody was in charge. The Prime Minister became incommunicado. I couldn't get in touch with him. The new king, obviously, I had no access to him. I didn't know where to get any instruction from to respond. Early that morning, the President of India called me, who happened to be a friend because he and I had both served as ambassador in Washington, Mr. Narayanan. And he told me that the government of India had readied a team to go for the funeral. And then there was nobody in Kathmandu I could talk to get an instruction. So I had to take things in my own hand. This is where I think my experience of having been in the government as a civil servant, as a diplomat, and as a minister helped. You know, the course of action I charted fortunately proved to be helpful. But I would tell you that, that was one moment where I, as a plenipotentiary ambassador, I really had to act as a plenipotentiary, take everything in my own hands. And even today, that episode is one of the most unpleasant things I can think of and not become emotional.
How do you view the political leaders of Nepal, even till today, using the gruesome royal massacre as a card for their short-term political benefits?
That part is unfortunate. I hope nobody plays that or uses that tragic, occasion for personal or group interest. Because there is larger question that remains unanswered in the minds of the Nepalese public and the rest of the world. And, from judging from that perspective, there is yet to be done to satisfy the query in the minds of the people, how they lost. And that, in many ways, I think that is the beginning of the end of monarchy from my point, perception. Whether monarchy would have lasted had King been there is only speculative, because the institution was getting weaker and weaker as people were becoming more assertive. But there remains a task of looking into the issue and closing it forever through a process of inquiry that is mature, not rushed, not half-hearted, not biased, because how Nepal lost a king who truly served the interest of the people and represented Nepal, represented not just the institution, but as a human being also. He's being looked upon with a great deal of reverence.
We'll continue with our conversation after a short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Power Talks. We are in conversation with Honorable Dr. Bekh Thapa. A culture has developed in Nepal that to be a political leader, you have to expertise in violence. And to be nominated as an ambassador, you have to be a politician's pet. How long will it take us to go past this culture and accept professionalism and to follow a standard system?
This, the culture of violence, that you cannot be heard unless you become very violent, in a sense has injected a very tragic element in our national life. Nepal was known as the land of Buddha, most peaceful country, land of Everest, where people, visitors from outside could come and walk any time of the day or night and not face any kind of harassment or difficulty. Unfortunately, in the last 20 years, Nepal's image from that peaceful land gifted by God as being, the abode of peace, Shangri-La, has now been converted into the Killing Terrace. A movie has been made of that name. And, people think twice before coming to Nepal. Even though I think the landscape, the nature of the people, I remember going back to my days in California as a student. Most of the Americans hadn't heard of Nepal, but they had heard of Everest. And whoever came to Nepal and went back, they would say, look, it's so distinctly different from other countries in South Asia. What is it that, despite all the poverty and deprivation, the Nepalese managed to keep a smile in their face, and their warmth of welcome to outsiders was exemplary. I used to feel very proud to be a Nepali. These days when I travel abroad, they ask, what has happened to the same people? What got into you? Why this barbaric beginning? And in a sense, it will take a long time for us to wash that blood stain. I hope somehow or other we can walk back to our past, not in terms of politics, not in terms of development, not in terms of lack of education and other facilities, but in terms of perception as human beings. Frankly, as a citizen, as you approach towards the end of active life, to see the image of Nepal today tarnished and blood-stained, I hope the younger generation will understand what has happened to them. Not only the difficulty of day-to-day living, the hassle, the harassment, the shortage, but the barbaric aspect of our daily life is beginning to give that perception to the rest of the world. As if we're incapable of helping ourselves, we need outsiders to govern us. This culture of sort of inability to take control of our life. And politics is all about governance based on people's will, based on law. Not if a man who thinks is weaker compared to the man who has a stick. The man who has a stick is weaker compared to the man who has a gun. If that culture continues to thrive, as it has now, only God can help us.
Rana regime for 104 years didn't provide education to common Nepalese citizens. And you are fortunate to have a sound education in India and in the US. But how was your primary schooling like?
I was born during the time of King Tribhuvan and Judha Samsher. But Rana regime, sort of ended around the time I was in the middle of the high school. The school we went to at that time, the Roar High School, was the only school in Nepal. Fortunately, I think the Ranas established, when they did something, they would do it well. And it was a good school. I even remember our teachers as being firm and very well grounded in their subject matter. What they taught me at that time gave me the kind of routing that made future steps, going to India or earning a scholarship to go to America, possible. So in many ways, I think a believer would say, God has been good to me. I'm neither a believer nor a rejectionist. I would say that, I think such situation has favored me.
You've had a very fulfilling life with honesty, with sincere commitment, and with hard work. How do you see that these simple human values have contributed to your success?
Well, as you said, yes, they have. They have, and I think I keep telling my friends, I have reached a stage in life, I neither have wish list nor regrets. Whatever I have done, opportunity has knocked on my door, and I have done the best of my ability to fulfill that responsibility. And at this stage of life, other than to mean well and be grateful to the population for being helpful to bring me to this stage, I think I have only gratitude and no wish, because I do not wish any further responsibility. But on the other hand, if my experience is helpful to the future generation, coming generation, in terms of what is good and what is difficult, what is less than good, I'll be only to be too happy to share it for their benefit.
Let us hope the younger generation imbibes the age-old wisdom of simple living and high thinking and are able to contribute to the nation in crisis. With this hope, we wish you good luck and goodbye. See you next week, the same time.